Hello and welcome to this basic introduction into SEMinR, structural equation modeling in R. And in this video, I will give you a short introduction into how you can set up your development environment so that you can follow along in the tutorial exercises. The first thing that you need to do is you need to install both R and RStudio, and it's easiest by going to the website of RStudio, which is posit.co/download/rstudio-desktop/, and here you have the two links for your operating system. The first thing that you need to do is download and install R, and this link takes you to the comprehensive R archive, also called CRAN. And depending on your operating system, you can either install Linux, macOS, or Windows R versions. And I will quickly go into the differences between the versions between macOS and Windows, because I assume most of you might either be Windows or macOS users. And if you're a Linux user, I think you're quite confident in installing packages. So for first for macOS, if I go into this macOS subdirectory, you can see there is two different installations that are available. The top two ones are the one that are relevant. This one is for the M1 Macs. This is for the Intel Macs. And if I download this, you will see that it downloads relatively quickly because I'm on a M1 Mac. I will have to download the ARM package. And there is a package installer. I just installed this a second ago, so I will not update this. It's a basic installation procedure. You just have to click on accept. And yeah, after that, you're finished with installing R for macOS. It's slightly different for Windows. So by going back here for the Windows link, I'll quickly see what you need to do here. If you're installing R for the first time, there is quite an there are some more things that you need to do, so I would advise you to follow this link. And it is also really helpful to install not just R, but also the R tools on a Windows machine, because they are sometimes needed to compile some of the packages that are only available in source form. So I would advise you to both install R plus the R tools on a Windows machine. And then you should be on the same page as a Linux-based install and a macOS install. It might be necessary to install additional compilers for some of the packages, not the ones that we'll use in the beginning, but maybe some that you might use later. If you run into any problems with that, you can always reach out and we'll try to find a way of helping you. But for 99% of the exercises, you will probably not need to install anything additional beyond the basic installation that you've just seen. The next thing that you need to install is RStudio Desktop for macOS, and if you have installed that, you have to download it and then install it. You will then have it available on your machine, and I can now start it from my Programs menu. So I go into Programs and I open RStudio, and after loading, it opens in this view. If you're installing a fresh version of R, and the current version that I installed a second ago is version 4.3.2, you will have to reinstall all the libraries that you use. And to prevent that from actually causing larger problems, I think a very helpful package to install in the beginning is the R environment package. So if you install R environment, R will automatically determine the most current version for that. And now you have a complete environment manager for all of your projects, so you don't have to worry about installing individual packages for every version on its own. So what you then do is, maybe to give you a quick overview, this is your R console. You also have your computer's terminal, and you can have background jobs running. At the moment, there are none. Here is a file browser, and the file browser shows you your base directory in the beginning. And up here, that is an important thing as well, is what is your current open project. And we don't have an open project because that manipulates the root of your working directory. If you're new to RStudio, here are some recommendations what you should do in the beginning to make sure that your environment is reproducible. Go into the Tools submenu and into Global Options. I think on Windows it might be somewhere else, but if you look for Global Options, you will find Global Options. And here in the General tab, I would highly suggest you deactivate restore RData into workspace at startup, and you don't save your workspace to RData on exit. So you put this to never, and you don't, you unclick this checkbox here. The reason for that is what this does is it makes your session in R permanent across individual startups, and this can so if you're restarting R, you will not have a fresh environment, but you will have your old environment. And sometimes you want to start fresh, and then you have to manually delete all the things in your environment, and that can cause all kinds of problems. So this is generally accepted as a best practice to not store your R data in the workspace. This is not the default in RStudio, so I would advise you to change that. Another thing that I always do, but it's not really necessary for you, is to not save your history, because I think that clutters your window. If you like to have your history there, it's not really a problem. Your window will just look different then. The other thing that I recommend is setting your base directory. And for this, on my case, instead of having it in the user home directory, I have a R workspace folder in my home, and this is where I store all of my R projects. And if I now set up a new project, it will be in this R workspace folder, and that makes it a lot easier to find what I'm doing. So what do we do next? Next, we obviously want to first install libraries, and since we have an environment manager, I don't install libraries directly to the main environment, but I install them on a project basis. So I need to have a project. I go into File, New Project, and RStudio has 3 ways of setting up new projects. You can either start with a blank new directory, which is what we're going to do, or you can import existing R projects that are not RStudio projects, or you can import projects from GitLab, GitHub, Subversion, or any other version control that you're using. We might do this later, but at the moment we'll just set up a new directory, and you will set up a new project. If you don't see the same window here, that's not a problem. You just need to have the new project thing enabled. And what you now need to do is give your project a name. And in this case, I will do SEMinR tutorial. You can use a dash or an underscore here. It's not really important. But what you can also see is that I have this set up in a way that I'm now in the subdirectory delete me. That is not necessary for you. I'll do this because I recreate these folders for videos like this, and obviously I will have to delete them afterwards. And this is just a reminder that the SEMinR tutorial folder that I'm using here can be deleted afterwards. What I highly advise to check are these 2 checkboxes. The lower one says you want to activate the R environment manager, and you want to activate a Git repository for your project. On a Windows machine, you might have to install Git before you're able to do this. And I would highly advise you do so, because Git makes software development and analyses a lot easier than not using Git. But if you don't have it installed and you don't want to mess with Git at the moment, it's not really a problem at the moment if you don't have this checked. But I would highly recommend using the R environment. If I now create this project, it will switch to this project and it will set up the project in this way. The git ignore is something that's generated if you have Git, and the other files are set up if you use the R environment. The R profile is a file that's always executed in this folder when you set up R, and this activates the R environment, there's a log file which keeps track of the versions of the libraries that you're using, and down here is where the actual files are. And the R project file is where all your settings are stored for this project. So if you're in this folder right now, you see that there's probably not a lot going on, which is why we need to create our first file. And I'll go in the File menu, New File, and click on R script. And this is our first R script. And I will save this as main.r. And now you see that we have the main.r file down here. And to have everyone on the same page, I would highly suggest you install some libraries. The first library that we are very likely going to use is the tidyverse library. So by typing library tidyverse and saving your file, RStudio will automatically recognize that you're using tidyverse, but it's not installed. and you can easily click on this install button, and this will then install the required dependencies inside of the R environment. This will be very fast for me because I just tested this and everything is in my cache, so it's it's already there. And the next thing that you should do is you should update your R environment. So in this case, I would do R environment snapshot, and this now asks me, these are all the libraries that are included in the tidyverse, and it asks me whether I want to record all of them inside of my R environment. And yes, that is something that I would like to do. And yes, after clicking yes, you will see that all these libraries are now recorded in your R environment log file. The log file is basically a JSON file that tells you what libraries are installed, with versions are installed. So you can always, if you give this project to someone else and they want to have all the same libraries with the same version numbers as you, so that they can have absolutely reproducible results, what they can do is R environment restore, and this will restore all the libraries if they don't have them on their machine at the same version number, if they are still available at CRAN, which they probably are going to be. So now we have the tidyverse installed. The next thing that we want to install is the SEMinR package. And you can do library SEMinR, and if you click install, it will now also install lots of libraries. And this goes fast because I already did this. And I would then do R environment snapshot, and this will now encode all of these libraries that are dependencies of SEMinR in your R environment log file. Another thing that I think is very useful to have is the use this library, and I will install this as well. This should also be fast. And another library that I would like to have is, is the remotes package, because this will allow you to run GitHub-based libraries, which we will in later parts of the tutorial. You click on install, and then the remotes package is installed, and after you're done with everything, you do renv-snapshot, and now all the additional packages are installed and they are available to you now. So this is basically your environment set up in a way that you can do all the things that you would like to do. If you're a Git user, you can go to the Git tab and now also commit what you've created into the local Git. So I would push the R profile, the git ignore, the main R, the R environment folder, the R environment lock, and the project file. So basically everything is added to your local Git repository, because the git ignore will already make sure that the actual libraries that are in the R environment folder are not synced to your Git repository. You click on commit, initial commit. This is where you put the commit message. Here you see the changes. Here you have the individual changes, the stage changes. Click on commit, and now you have everything in your local Git repository. Obviously, you have not synced it to any origin, so it's not on your GitLab or GitHub or whatever. I'll show you how to do that in another video or during the tutorial at another point in time. At the moment, we don't need this. We only have it locally, so we can go back if we made a mistake. And this is the most basic version of setting up your environment for using SEMinR, and I'll hope to see you in the next tutorial videos.